In this video, we're going to introduce a negative exponent. So first, let's start with 2 to the third. And this is a problem that we are familiar with. And we know the exponent 3 here means 3 copies and of 2. And the operation we're doing is multiplication. So we're going to multiply 3 copies of 2, and which gives us 8. So if we work it out, we will get 8. So when the exponent is a positive integer, it means the number of copies. But now, what if we have a negative exponent? So for example, 2 to the negative first. And if we still use the same meaning as the number of copies, it doesn't make sense because we cannot say we have negative 1 copy of 2. And we can have 1 copy of 2, but we cannot have negative 1 copy of something. So here, the negative exponent has a new meaning, which is totally different from the number of copies. And also, it's a lot of us might be thinking this will give us negative 2, which is also incorrect. And negative, we know how to write negative 2. We just put a minus sign in front of 2. So we will not put a negative sign as the exponent. So these are also different. And so the meaning of negative exponent is a concept we learned before, which is called the reciprocal. Sometimes we also say the inverse. So the reciprocal of the base number, which is 2 in this case. And if you remember what a reciprocal is, and whenever you have a number, even though it's not a fraction format, we can put a 1 underneath, it would turn that into a fraction format. And the reciprocal of 2 or 1. So when we see a question like this with the negative exponent, it means it's asking us to find the reciprocal of 2 or 2 over 1. And reciprocal of a number is we flip the top and the bottom. So we're going to get 1 over 2. So the answer of 2 to negative 1 is not negative 2. It's actually a positive number. It's still a positive number, but it just turns 2 to the its reciprocal, which is 1/2. And so what if we have so that's when our exponent is negative 1. What if our exponent is negative 3? So we will have to do 2 steps. So first of all, the negative sign here in the exponent also tells us to flip the base. But this 3 does have the same meaning as what we just talked about, means 3 copies. So we will have to do 2 steps. Let's see here, we can separate negative sign and 3. So we, again, negative exponent tells us to find the reciprocal of the base. And 3 means 3 copies of the base. So there are 2 steps that we have to do. And the order doesn't matter, whether we take the reciprocal of the base 2, and then take 3 copies of the previous answer, or we take 3 copies of the base and then flip that. Okay, so we are going to, let's look at 2 different solutions. So solution 1. Solution 1, I'm actually going to do this first. So step 1, I am going to take 3 copies of the base. So I'm going to do 2 to the third, and which we already did, multiply 3 copies of 2, that gives us 8. But once we get the answer, 8, and we need to, because there's a minus sign in front of the exponent, so we're going to take 8 and flip it. Again, this minus sign right here tells us to flip the answer we got from 2 to the third. So the difference between 2 to the third and 2 to the negative third, is the answers will be reciprocal of each other. So we're going to take 8, and again 8 we can write it as 8 over 1. So now we can flip the 8 to the bottom and 1 to the top. So the answer is 1 over 8. So that's solution 1. Now solution 2, we can change the order of the operations. So first I'm going to deal with this minus sign. So that means we're going to have to do 2 to negative 1, which we just did right here. 2 to negative 1 means the reciprocal of 2, which is 1/2. And in step 2, we're going to deal with that 3 in the exponent. So that means we don't take the number 2 anymore. We have to take the answer we got and do 3 copies. So we're going to have to do 1/3 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. Because of this 3. Because this minus sign, we already did it. This minus sign, we flip 2, we already got 1/2. So now we just need to deal with this 3, so multiply 3 copies. And now we can multiply straight across, top times top times top, 1 times 1 times 1, that's 1. The bottom will be 2 times 2 times 2, that gives us 8. As you can see, in both of these solutions, we end up with the same answer, 1/8. And probably the first solution is a little easier because instead of multiplying 1/2 3 times in the second solution, we multiply the whole number 2 3 times to get 8 and just flip it the 8 to get the answer. All right, so next let's apply the definition and look at how we do 2/3 to negative 1. So again, the negative exponent tells us to flip the answer, which gives us, sorry, not flip the answer, flip the base, which is 2/3. So we're going to flip 3 to the top and 2 to the bottom. That gives us 3/2. And by the way, this little 1 here just means we have 1 copy. And again, 1 copy means we don't really need to do anything. So automatically we have 1 copy. Okay, so let's look at one more example here. So 3 to negative 2. And so again, we have 2 possible solutions, and we could split negative 2. And probably I can take a second to kind of explain the two different solutions, what we did here, and why could we separate negative 3 into a negative sign and a 3? Because negative 3 can be obtained by multiplying 3 and negative 1, or negative 1 times 3. So the exponent, as you can see here, let me erase this here. So as you can see, in the first solution, I break negative 3 down as 3 times negative 1. And from one of the exponent rules we talked about it before, when we have, for example, x to the second and then to the third, we can multiply the exponents 2 and 3 to get x to the 6th. So the same thing here. When I have an exponent, which is the multiplication of these two numbers, I could take exponent this one and then that one. So that's why we can do 2 steps, because negative 3 can be written as 3 times negative 1. And again, let me add a step here. So 2 to negative 3 times negative 1. So we could take the exponent and third power first, and then and take the exponent negative first. So it's reversing the exponent rule we learned before. Okay, so let's look at this question. And what I'm going to do is, if you want to skip this step, you can. So you could do that in your mind. Say, okay, first I'm going to do 2 copies. Just temporarily forget about the minus, because we will do the minus later. So we just do 2 copies, and later we're going to do the negative first power. And when we do 2 copies of 3, we get 9. And then when we get 9, the negative exponent tells us to flip 9, which gives us 1/9. All right, so let's look at these 3 examples here. In the first case, so all of these questions, we notice we have a negative exponent. So we have these 2 options, 2 solutions that we can do. and whether you're gonna, I'm gonna kind of separate the minus sign from the number digit. So we can get a positive integer, 3 or 2 and 4, and then we can deal with the minus later. Or you could deal with the minus sign. Usually, if you are given like an integer, a whole number, probably it's better to deal with this number of copies, say 3 copies or 2 copies or 4 copies. But if you have a fraction like in the base, like in this case, if I do 3 copies of this, then I have to do -1/2 times -1/2 times -1/2, and that will also work. But it might be easier if I deal with the minus sign first, because that can turn my, and notice the base is very special. It's -1/5 and negative exponent minus. So again, this minus sign, let me highlight that. This minus sign will flip the base. So when we have -1/5, we flip top to bottom, bottom to top. That will give us -5/1, which is literally -5. So we're going to get -5. And one thing is when we flip the numbers, the minus sign will still be there. You don't have to flip it. And the reason is because -1/5, the minus sign, you can put it associated with the top or the bottom. So if I associate the minus sign with the top, again, negative divided by positive is negative. When we flip top to bottom, bottom to top, and notice the +5 will be flipped to the top and -1 will be flipped to the bottom. That still gives us a negative number. So that's why when we do the reciprocal of negative number, it stays as negative. So you literally just need to flip the digits. So that gives us -5. And so now I got the minus sign taken care of. So again, the minus sign means flip the base, which I did. -1/5 becomes -5. Now I just have to do 3 copies of -5, which is -5 times -5 times -5. And that gives us 25 times -5, and that is -125. So if the base, if we notice that when we flip the base, we could turn that into an integer, then we may do that first. But of course, you can also do solution 2. Say I'm not gonna flip it. I'm gonna do 3 copies. So I would get -1/5 times -1/5 times -1/5, which gives us -1/125. And we'll get this answer, and we have to flip it, because we have to deal with this minus highlighted, and which gives us -125, because we flip the top to bottom, bottom to top. Okay, I mean, technically we should have 1 down here, but anything divided by 1 will be itself. So that's why we could just get rid of that 1. Okay, so for these two, I'm actually going to deal with this positive integer first. So first I'm going to do -4 squared, and which we know -4 squared is -4 times -4, that is 16. So I'm going to do that in my head, so I get 16. But then I'm going to have to deal with this negative sign, and which flips 16 to the bottom, which it gives us 1/16. And same thing here. So first I'm going to do 2 to the 4th. So 2 to the 4th means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and that gives us 16. And then flip it, the minus sign tells us to flip 16 to the bottom. So we actually end up with the same answer, 1/16. So to summarize, the only thing new in this video is a negative exponent. And we need to remember a negative exponent doesn't mean a negative number. It actually means reciprocal. So the minus sign means you flip the base, or you take the reciprocal.